Welcome to the killing game. Within 2 minutes, please stay away from all red items, or you will suffer misfortune. When the announcement went off, I was picking out tomatoes. The moment I heard it, I instinctively flung the tomatoes away and jumped as far back as I could. An uncle in a red shirt, upon hearing this, burst into a string of curses. "What the hell is this? Are you deliberately messing with me, or what?" Unexpectedly, 2 minutes later, the red shirt on his body exploded. The blast tore the man apart as well, leaving him a bloody, mangled mess. It wasn't just the uncle's red shirt that exploded. Every red object in the mall detonated. Those who were near red items were hit in various ways. Some suffered minor injuries from flying debris. Some were cut and bleeding. Others were worse off, with limbs blown off, and a few even killed. In an instant, the whole mall filled with a pungent metallic scent of blood. The mall immediately descended into chaos. "Help! Help! Why did it suddenly explode? Someone save me! I'm bleeding so much." Amid a chorus of screams and wails, everyone ran for the exits, only to find as they got closer that every exit had been sealed shut. "Call the police! Call the police now!" Someone in the crowd shouted, and everyone hurriedly took out their phones. "No signal. I don't have signal either. What's going on?" I opened my phone. There was no signal. It seemed we had been drawn into a strange, sinister game. Staring at the chaotic scene before me, I took a deep breath to steady myself. I guessed that one brutal rule after another would follow. Sure enough, the broadcast sounded quickly. "Congratulations to those who passed the small test. The mall's total population is 7,892 people, and 7,879 currently remain alive. Next, please listen carefully to the mall rules. This mall has 4 floors in total. Dear customers, you will need to go to each floor to participate in the games. Note, you may not participate in a game on the same floor as another contestant. Each game has a 2-hour time limit. You must follow the rules of the game on each floor. Those who fail to reach the designated floor within the allotted time will die. If you don't finish the game, you die. If you break the rules of the game, you die. If you try to escape, you die." The repeated word "die" slammed into everyone's heads again and again. Some of the more timid had already begun to cry. But no one dared run or resist anymore. Everyone had witnessed the earlier explosion. Next, everyone has 5 minutes to go to the floor where they will participate in the game. Important: do not choose the floor you are currently on. The announcement had barely ended when a bright red countdown appeared at the top of the mall. The crowd exploded into an instant uproar. Not being allowed to stay on the current floor meant that all 7,889 people in the mall had to move at once, and within 5 minutes go to other floors. The mall wasn't large. I was on the 2nd floor. As the crowd stirred, I immediately reacted and started running downstairs. I planned to start from the 1st floor and work my way up. 5 minutes was actually a generous amount of time. Moving up 1 floor within that window was entirely feasible. But under the weight of fear, people ran with every ounce of strength. The mall wasn't large to begin with, and once chaos set in, the crowd couldn't move at all. Not to mention, the 5-minute countdown hung over us like a sharp blade, urging everyone to quicken their pace. Relying on youth and a small build, I managed to keep my footing and push forward through the confusion. Yet the elderly, those who could barely walk, and people with children were soon trampled to death beneath the crowd. The first game hadn't even officially started, and another batch of people had already died. I gritted my teeth, dodged hazards with difficulty, and ran toward the 1st floor. Just as I was about to reach the escalator, the crowd behind me couldn't hold back again and surged forward. I wasn't prepared and was pushed toward the ground. As my body tipped forward, someone behind grabbed my arm, steadying me and guiding me safely down to the 1st floor. I immediately composed myself, shouted, "Run," to the person behind me, then sprinted forward to put distance between myself and the chaos. Once I had firm footing, I finally had a moment to look up and see who had helped me. He was a tall, burly man who looked full of strength. I gave the person in front of me a smile. "Thanks." I didn't know what would happen next, but since he'd helped me just now, I should thank him. "Don't mention it. It's nothing. Just a small favor. It's just that the others couldn't help them." A trace of helplessness appeared on the big man's face. My name's Ethan Lee. You are. I held out my hand, changing the subject. My name is Lucas E. Lucas E. gripped the hand I offered with a bright smile. At that moment, the timer stopped, and the announcement for the first floor began. I immediately focused my attention on what it said. Welcome, customers, to the first floor. Please feel free to browse and select your goods. The rules for this floor are as follows. 1. Customers have 2 hours to select goods with a total value of 10,000 yuan. Those who go to the checkout and successfully pay may leave. 2. The mall does not want customers to waste merchandise, so please choose what you need. 3. Anyone who fails to complete the task according to the rules will die. 4. Those who do not successfully clear the challenge will die. 5. Anyone who leaves their floor before the game ends will die. Next, please feel free to make your selections. The rule wasn't hard to understand, but it still sent a chill through everyone's hearts. A staff member stood at the checkout counter, her gaze blank, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was mockery hidden in her eyes. I stared at her for a long moment and belatedly realized that after the announcement sounded, the mall staff had disappeared. Kid, what are you standing there for? Hurry up and start picking items. This game doesn't look hard. We should get it over with quickly. Lucas E. grabbed a cart for me and pushed it up in front of me. All right, let's go pick the items first. The rules sounded simple. At least that's what everyone thought, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the rules would never be so superficial. But basically everyone thought the same as Lucas E. They wanted to beat the level and get out as fast as possible, so they scrambled to pile things onto their carts. The first floor was mainly a living area, selling daily necessities, clothes and shoes. Some people try to reach the 10,000 yuan mark faster, turn their attention to garments. We went to the men's clothing section too. But when Lucas E. reached out to grab a designer coat, I stopped him. What's up, little brother? Lucas E., better not take the coat. I lowered my voice and leaned in to continue. The rules said we're to choose what we need. It's summer now. It's so hot. Generally, we won't need a coat. Whether I'm right or not, it's better to be cautious. Hearing that, Lucas E. quickly withdrew his outstretched hand. Fine, we'll listen to our little brother. But since you've thought of this, why not tell the others? If the rule is like you say, then a lot of people here. Lucas E. didn't continue. He only glanced at the men grabbing women's clothes and the women snatching men's outfits. In that brief moment, the jacket Lucas E. had his eye on was scooped up by a tall woman. But I shook my head. Putting aside whether anyone will believe me, let's assume I'm wrong. I'm afraid people won't buy it. I'm not heartless, but I'm certainly no pushover. Lucas E. glanced at me, but didn't say anything. To avoid the rules as much as possible, I told Lucas E. to just pick a few things he could actually wear. Just as we were pushing the cart to go choose other items, a chubby man was already wheeling a cart full of goods up to the checkout. Hey, check me out quickly. All right, sir. Hearing the man's voice, the cashier lifted a smile. But that smile was deeply unsettling. The man was clearly frightened too, but he forced himself to act composed and asked the cashier to ring him up. The cashier picked up the scanner and swept it over the items, and the device issued a warning. Beep. Warning. Item failed inspection. As the sound of the barcode scanner died away, the cashier's voice spoke up again. Dear customer, your item has failed inspection. What will you do about that? The smile on the cashier's face grew even more uncanny, the corners of her mouth stretching wider and wider, until suddenly she opened a bloody maw and lunged to bite the man. The man didn't even have time to make a sound before he was swallowed into the cashier's stomach. Everyone who saw the scene was terrified. Some of the more faint-hearted even went weak at the knees, collapsing to the ground and covering their faces as they sobbed. The sight made me feel uneasy too, even a little nauseous. I glanced at Lucas E. and clenched my fists. Lucas E., my guess is he broke the rule about not wasting merchandise. Picked out too many things he couldn't use himself. See, there are even a few women's garments in there. That's probably why he was eliminated. I raised my voice, pretending to speak to Lucas E., but actually sending the message to those around us. At the same time, I gave Lucas E.'s shoulder a light pat, signaling him to relax his tense muscles. Here, force can't solve the problem. Lucas E. understood and picked up the thread of my words. Yes, it seems we really have to choose goods based on our own needs. Hearing us, the people around perked up and began to pick their items more seriously. Lucas E. and I hurried off to pick out other daily necessities. More than half an hour had passed. This time, two girls timidly made their way to the cashier to pay. I saw that they were very frightened, but still tried to encourage each other. With a beep from the scanner, the items passed inspection, and the two girls let out a sigh of relief. Total amount 10,000 yuan. Please scan. The cashier raised the scanner again. Okay. The two girls answered in unison and both opened their payment QR codes. Beep. Payment verification failed. The sound made everyone tense. The two girls looked even more alarmed. How could this be? We clearly. But before they could finish, the cashier cut them off. The people around couldn't help but shiver. Some of the pessimists simply lay down on the ground to wait for death. Isn't it supposed to be paid with a payment QR code? Why did those two girls break the rules? We're doomed. We're all doomed. This shitty game doesn't want us to live. The entire first floor erupted in complaints. I frowned as well. Logically, since they dared to go up and pay, the two girls' amounts must have been sufficient. So why did the verification fail? I felt a bit irritated. Hey kid, Lucas Yee's voice dragged me back. You look unwell. Are you all right? I'm fine. I straightened my expression. Little brother, what do you think is going on here? This won't work. That won't work. This game really can't be completed, can it? Lucas E was usually steady, but now he was getting scared. It shouldn't be. Games can't be dead ends. I muttered. I must have missed something. Suddenly, I looked up toward the cashier counter. Lucas E, watch these things for me while I go check the cashier for clues. Saying that, I ignored Lucas Yee's attempt to stop me and walked straight to the counter. I stopped in front of the cashier, raised my hand, and waved it in front of her, but there was no response. I picked up the items on the checkout counter and examined them again, but there was no response. It seemed my guess had been right. The rules never said we couldn't approach the checkout counter. There had to be a clue here. With that thought, I turned my attention to the loose change in the drawer. If payments and receipts were a dead end, then the only place left to start was with the coins. I inhaled sharply the moment I opened the coin locker. Seeing that I was still unharmed after those little maneuvers, a few people had already gathered around me, eager to see what clue I might find. When I opened the coin locker, there was a ripple of gasps around me. Before I could recover from my shock, someone beside me had already started shouting. I know. It's blood. It's blood. Money is blood. Yes, that entire drawer was full of blood. The man shouting suddenly went mad, pushing his cart and shoving aside everyone gathered at the checkout, clawing his way to pay. I was shoved out too, nearly falling, but Lucas he caught me just in time. I glanced toward the checkout. That person's items had already passed inspection. The total is 10,000 yuan. Please scan, the cashier said, raising the scanner just like before. The man produced a small knife from somewhere and slashed his own forearm hard. Blood dripped, drip, onto the counter. This should be enough. Beep. Insufficient balance. The man continued to let his blood flow. Is that enough? Beep. Insufficient balance. They stayed locked like that until the counter was soaked with blood, the floor carpeted in it, before the longed-for clearance message finally came. Beep. Payment verification passed. Congratulations, you've cleared the level and may leave. As the scanner's tone fell, the gate beside the checkout swung open. Great, the man cried, ecstatic, charging for the exit. But I noticed his face was deathly pale. Sure enough, the man collapsed to the ground after only a few steps. It was impossible to tell if he was dead or alive. This little brother, what on earth is going on? Do we have to use our own blood to get out of here? Lucas E., a big, burly man, had started to break out in a cold sweat. It seems so. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself, but the next second I snapped them open. Not good. I instinctively grabbed Lucas E. and stepped back. As expected, the next second the entire crowd began to stir. What's going on? Based on what just happened to that person, everyone should have figured it out. 10,000 yuan probably requires about an adult's worth of blood. Donating your own blood is simply unrealistic, so I didn't continue. The facts I could read were, of course, plain to everyone else as well. I glanced around. On the second floor, there were 5 corpses that had died early from the red explosions, but were still relatively intact. I had quietly counted them while picking over the goods. I hadn't expected those bodies to have any use. People were already tearing into one another over the bodies, and those who couldn't get any, or who worried the corpses no longer had enough blood, turned their attention to the living participants on the floor. This was what I had been afraid of. Luckily, Lucas, he was standing next to me. He looked like trouble, so for the moment no one dared come near. But I also saw some people who were a bit older, or some who were smaller and weaker, suffering misfortune. God damn it, stop it. Lucas, he couldn't help himself when a skinny man was punching and kicking a sobbing girl in front of us. Lucas, he blocked the man's fist and landed several punches of his own, hitting him until stars danced in his eyes. The girl who had been rescued hurried away. The skinny boy was clearly provoked and started butting heads with Lucas C. I stood to the side watching, helpless. But how was this round supposed to be solved? If you really had to rely on someone's blood to get out, putting aside whether there would be enough bodies, in order to acquire enough money through murder, at least half the participants would have to be lost. Was this game really that perverse? But setting up such a slaughter game, a pervert like this is almost to be expected. So what should we do? Where's the way to break this? If they really intend to kill people, I don't think I can do it. Do we really have to trade one life for another? Wait a minute. One person for one person? A sudden flash lit up in my mind. It seemed there was a way. Just as I was about to call Lucasy back, someone lightly tapped me on the shoulder. I turned and saw a girl with a high ponytail, looking neat and like a student. Hi. I noticed you when you went to the checkout counter for clues earlier, so I've been watching you. It looks like you figured something out. I didn't respond, my eyes wary. Perhaps seeing my vigilance, the girl in front of me spoke again. Don't be afraid. I thought a plan too, but it's risky. I want to see what your idea is. I could say mine first. What I thought is, the rules never said that only one person can select items or check out. I think we could check out together. I was stunned. That was exactly my thought. Nowhere in the rules did it say only one person could check out. But that idea was risky. If we guessed wrong, the consequence would be death. I also understood the real reason this girl had come to me. She was worried her guess might be wrong. I was thinking the same thing. Since you think that too, why don't we cooperate? Me and that guy, I said, nodding toward Lucas E., who was still fighting, we'll try it with you. Time was running out. I glanced up the countdown. Only 10 minutes left. Around me, people were using others' lives to save their own. And those who remained had become even more ruthless. If I hadn't met Lucas E., there's a very good chance I would have been injured today as well. Everyone listen. After a quick discussion with that girl, we decided to try a clumsy plan. We have an idea to clear this level. A group of people can cooperate, use multiple people's blood, and go to pay together. The rules never said the payment had to be made by a single person. At the mention of a way out, everyone fell silent. But when they heard what the plan was, they reacted with a mixture of irritation and disbelief. But that didn't matter. While everyone was momentarily stunned, I hauled Lucasy out of the fray, and the girl, and I shoved the cart toward the checkout. Beep. Item inspection passed. The 3 of us each slashed our forearms. Beep. Payment inspection passed. Congratulations. You have cleared the level and may leave. The gate opened, and the 3 of us ran out quickly. As expected, we made it through. Like survivors from a disaster, we collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Although the 3 of us shared the blood loss, the stinging in our arms and the lack of blood still made us dizzy. The people inside saw that the method worked and finally stopped killing, beginning instead to pair up and head for the exits. Only after my taut nerves finally loosened a little did I notice that the smell of blood around me had somehow grown stronger. But the cash register had long since been layered again and again with fresh blood. Hi, I'm Zoe Zhao, a high school student. Let's be friends. Cooperating in the upcoming rounds gives us a better chance of winning. Zoe Zhao reached out her hand and smiled at us. Hello, I'm Lucas E., a retired boxer. Hi, I'm Ethan Lee, a horror novelist. We had just finished introducing ourselves when the countdown ended. The broadcast sounded on time. Congratulations to all customers for surviving the first round. The mall's total population was 7,892 people. Current survivors, 5,986. Next, you have half an hour to proceed to participate in the second round. We hope all customers enjoy the game. I hadn't expected that nearly 2,000 people would die in just the first round. We need to be on high alert for the rest of the game. The three of us hurried up to the second floor. With the head count drastically reduced and plenty more time, the trip went much smoother than the previous round. The second floor was the food section, selling prepared dishes and fresh produce. We rested briefly on the second floor, and before long, half an hour had passed. The broadcast on the second floor sounded on time. We welcome all customers to the second floor. Please feel free to browse the merchandise. The rules for this floor are as follows. 1. There are no security guards on this floor. If any appear, under no circumstances should you make eye contact. 2. Do not attack the staff. Otherwise, the staff will become very angry. 3. Do not mess up the merchandise. Otherwise, the staff will become very angry. 4. If any merchandise ends up on you, promptly return it to its original place. Otherwise, the staff will become very angry. 5. If you encounter staff wearing red uniforms, hide. Do not under any circumstances let them catch you. 6. Until the game ends, do not leave this floor. Otherwise, the staff will be very angry. Now, please feel free to choose. Do your best to survive for 2 hours. The moment the broadcast ended, numerous staff members appeared all over the second floor. The rules mention the staff several times. It seems these staff members are very important. The timer started, and the three of us braced ourselves, fully alert. Luckily, having been through the baptism of the first round, those taking part in the second were far more cautious and no longer flouted the rules at will. The three of us strolled along while keeping an eye and ear on what was happening around us. 10 minutes passed, and nothing happened during that time. But we couldn't relax either. Sure enough, the crowd soon began to stir. My God, these products are actually moving. They're running into me. Quick, grab it and put it back where it belongs. There was noise coming from more than one place. Many people had been targeted by the merchandise. The three of us heard the commotion and immediately moved away from the shelves, but there were shelves everywhere, so we couldn't truly put any distance between ourselves and them. Staff members soon walked over to the spots where the disturbances had occurred. As the staff approached, those people grew afraid. Customer, please put the item down. The staff's voice sounded mechanical, utterly devoid of warmth. Right away, right away. The person under the staff member's gaze was frantically yanking the merchandise off their body, but whether from fear or something else, they couldn't manage to get it off. You have 10 seconds left, the staff member said again. Wait, it'll be done in a moment. It'll be done in a moment. 10, 9, I've almost got it. I'm almost got it, please. The man was still flustered and fumbling. 1. When the countdown ended, a staff member suddenly reached out, clamped his hand hard around the person in front of him's throat, and snapped it. At the same time, others who had been entangled by the merchandise and failed to grab hold met the same fate. Before she could even warn them, Zoe Zhao cried out, Ethan Lee, a bag of potato chips has run up onto your back. Seeing this, Zoe Zhao and Lucas E. hurried to help me grab the bag of chips. But for some reason, the bag had become slick. Even when held, it would slip away from our hands and might slide over to the person next to us. At that moment, a staff member was already walking toward us. Customer, please put the item down. The familiar tone sounded, and at that instant the bag of chips happened to slide on a Lucas E. The three of us all let out a collective gasp. Zoe Zhao and I fumbled and snatched for the bag of chips. At that moment something worse happened. I saw several people in red work uniforms enter through the entrance. If you encounter staff in red uniforms, hide. Whatever you do, don't let them catch you. Thinking of the rule made me even more nervous. I threw myself across Lucas E., blocking the chips path, and pressed my hand down on the bag. A small bag of chips somehow had so much force I could barely hold on to it. Zoe Zhao, seeing this, hurried to help. You have 10 seconds remaining, the staff member said. Hurry, I shouted to the two of them, urging them to help put the chips back in place. 10. I'll go. Lucas stood up and clutched the potato chip. 9. 6. Careful, don't crush it, Zoe Zhao warned. 4. At last, when the staff shouted 3, we put the bag of chips back. The staff finally left, but we couldn't relax because just now we had seen the people touched by those in red uniforms turn to powder in an instant. Let's hide quickly. Zoe Zhao was the first to speak and led us into hiding. Because of the people in red uniforms on the entire second floor, shoppers knocked over many items while trying to dodge them. At that point, staff members would step forward and demand the merchandise be straightened up, but everyone was too busy hiding from the red uniformed people to tidy anything. So they ran. Unexpectedly, when they ran, the staff's hand would stretch out and literally snap the fleeing person's neck. Seeing scene after scene like this, the three of us broke out in cold sweat. Good thing those in red uniforms didn't come over just now, or the three of us would be doomed. There'd be nowhere to run. Lucas said, shaken. I don't think this is right, Zoe Zhao said, shaking her head slightly. Have you noticed that when the staff speak, the people in red uniforms never come close? The three of us exchanged a look. It did seem to be the case. Only then did I remember that earlier someone had clearly been chased by the people in red uniforms. After he knocked over the merchandise, a staff member had stepped forward and told him to straighten the shelves. At the time, I had focused only on the staff and hadn't noticed that the red uniformed people hadn't approached. Could it be that these two types of people are somehow constrained by one another? I speculated, but hiding wasn't the safest option. It didn't take long for us to be discovered. Just as the man in the red uniform was about to reach us, Lucas grabbed the nearest object and flung it, buying us a chance to flee. But because we had disturbed the merchandise, the staff had their eyes on us. However, our guess had been right. Whenever the staff appeared, the men in red never approached. We hurriedly sorted the goods and were about to run when a loaf of bread bounced off me. Damn, I couldn't help but curse. At the staff's urging, the few of us clumsily grabbed at the loaves. Just as the staff began to count down, I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Young man, that bread is yours. Keep it safe. A hand holding the bread that had been running toward me reached me from behind and handed it over. I was about to turn and say thank you when my head was pushed down by Zoe Zhao. Don't look back, run. Zoe Zhao grabbed us and pulled us forward. The person standing behind us is security. If we look back, they'll definitely make eye contact. Only after stopping did Zoe Zhao explain to us. It was then that I suddenly realized the arm that had been reaching out moments ago was indeed wearing a security guard's uniform. I really hadn't expected this round to be so humiliating. If we hadn't worked together, I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't have broken the rules. That was way too close, Lucas said, still shaken. Some of the people who made eye contact with the security guards literally exploded. They literally detonated. We couldn't help a cold sweat. On this floor, we not only had to avoid being touched by the workers in red uniforms and dodge the merchandise, but we also had to react instantly when products barreled toward us, and at all times keep our gaze down. Never make eye contact with the guards. It was an extreme test of reflexes and attention. Anyone alone simply couldn't survive. Even cooperating with others was a 1 in a million chance. Fortunately, Zoe Zhao, Lucas and I worked so well together that we made it through without major mishaps, holding on until the very last moment. When the countdown finally ended, the three of us collapsed to the floor, utterly spent. I glanced around. Besides the three of us, the only survivors on the second floor were a pair of brothers. I didn't expect the death toll on this floor to be so high, Zoe Zhao said, clearly shaken. The rules on this floor are simple, but sometimes the simpler they are, the harder they become. I stretched, signaling for everyone to hurry and take a breather. Congratulations to all customers for surviving the second round. The mall's total population is 7,892 people. Current survivors, 3,784. Next, you have half an hour to proceed to participate in the third round. We hope all customers enjoy the game. It seemed that the further they went, the more their strength was drained, and the heavier the casualties became. Only 2 more stages left. I don't know if we'll make it to the end, Lucas E said. We will, Lucas E. I patted Lucas E on the shoulder. Yeah, Lucas E will definitely make it to the end. Zoe Zhao stood and cheered. The 3 of them encouraged one another and continued up to the 3rd floor. When we arrived at the 3rd floor, we were stunned by the sight before us. Though the atmosphere on the 2 lower floors had become strange, their original displays remained unchanged, but the 3rd floor had been transformed completely. On the 3rd floor stood nothing but a giant hot pot. It was a real, massive hot pot, easily 10 times larger than the one-person kind, surrounded by chairs. A quick sweep showed there must be over 100 of them. A rich broth boiled inside the pot, steaming furiously and filling the entire 3rd floor with heat and haze. The 3rd floor had originally been a restaurant, a place for eating. Now it seemed the game on this level was somehow tied to food. The game hadn't started yet, so we gathered around the hot pot to look for clues. But there was nothing to be found. Apart from the big hot pot and the tables and chairs, there was nothing else here. The things on the tables looked normal enough. Bowls, chopsticks, and some dishes. Only they were all vegetarian. Soon, the announcement for the 3rd floor came on. Welcome, customers, to the 3rd floor. The game on this floor, as you can see before you, the hot pot game. Hot pot game rules are as follows. 1. Please have each customer choose a seat and sit down. 2. Do not leave your seat on your own, so as not to affect others' dining experience. 3. Keep quiet during the meal. Do not make noise so as not to disturb other diners. 4. Please dine under the guidance of the staff and cooperate with their work. Next, please enjoy your meal. No sooner had the announcement finished than a server in a deep blue apron stepped out from behind us. Dear customers, welcome. However, our venue is small, only 200 seats. Those without seats will not be able to dine. The waiter's voice was lazy and teasing, but I immediately snapped to attention. Not good. I instantly looked at Zoe Zhao and Lucas. Both of them wore guarded expressions. So I took the lead and ran. There were only 200 seats, and whether there were enough or not, they absolutely must not be the last. Quite a few people reacted. In a matter of seconds, the 200 seats were filled. Some people even fought viciously over seats. Zoe Zhao, Lucas E, and I sat tightly together, guarding against those around us. As expected, those without seats all collapsed at once, and the next moment they vanished into thin air. But someone noticed that fragments of limbs were slowly surfacing in the hot pot. Ah, what is this? Waiter, come and see. Some people, frightened, couldn't help but scream loudly, but the next second, there was no sound. Dear customers, please follow the rules. Keep quiet during dining time. No loud noises allowed. I swallowed and looked at the other 2 people. Their faces were just as pale. Although getting through the first 2 rounds had greatly strengthened my nerves, seeing those mutilated body parts laid out so blatantly still made me nauseous. Dear customers, it's now mealtime. The meat is already in the pot. Please add the vegetables, the attendant said with a teasing tone. I glanced at the vegetables in front of me, just Napa cabbage, enoki mushrooms, lettuce, and the like, perfectly ordinary. But here it felt wrong instead. I glanced around. No one was willing to make the first move. Who knew if there might be some trap here? I looked to my right at Zoe Zhao. She had no clue either and shook her head. Lucas, he was on my left, but I knew he was just as clueless. I wanted to search the table for clues, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Dear customers, when are you going to put out the plain dishes? The waiter urged. I glanced up at the waiter and suddenly noticed that the apron she was wearing seemed a little different. I remember that at first, the apron she wore had been a deep navy blue, but now, the pattern at the very center of the server's apron was green. Green? Could the vegetable they were adding have something to do with green? I looked at the table. The surest green, there was the lettuce. Could it be that? I picked up my chopsticks and hovered them over the lettuce, but still didn't dare to pick any up. Zoe Zhao and Lucas saw my movement, and both looked down at the lettuce on their own plates. Lucas still looked puzzled, but Zoe Zhao seemed to understand. She glanced up at the waiter, then tilted her head to look at me. I nodded. We didn't dare speak because we weren't sure what volume would be judged as making noise, so we had to communicate with gestures. Seeing me nod, Zoe Zhao said nothing and picked up a lettuce leaf to drop into the hot pot. I picked up my chopsticks too. Lucas E saw it, and though he didn't know why, he copied our actions and put some lettuce in. The people around us, seeing what we did, also hesitantly began to pick up lettuce. The hot pot was large. In fact, people farther away couldn't see each other. From my blind spot, I couldn't see others' movements, and likewise, they couldn't see mine. But as long as someone copies how we pick up the dishes and it spreads, everyone will figure it out. After everyone had taken their turn picking up the food, I saw a slight displeasure cross the waiter's face. I had bet right. It seems all our customers are very fond of lettuce. However, just putting lettuce won't do. Please continue adding the other vegetable dishes, everyone. I had meant to keep watching the pattern and color of the waitress's apron to judge, but unexpectedly, she walked farther away as she spoke and ended up on the other side of the hot pot. From where I was, I couldn't see the waitress at all. I turned to look at Zoe Zhao, but she only shook her head. Of course, Zoe Zhao was right beside me, so it was just as hard for her to see the waitress on the other side. It looks like this time, we can only pin our hopes on those who can see the servers. I glanced at the people beside me. No one reached for their chopsticks. Just as we were stuck in this stalemate, Zoe Zhao leaned forward and strained her neck, peering intently toward the other side. Seeing Zoe Zhao's movement, both Lucas E. and I jumped in surprise and watched her tensely. But she hadn't broken any rules. True enough, the rules forbade leaving her seat and making noise, but Zoe Zhao had neither left her seat nor made any sound. She was taking a gamble and also testing the limits of the rules. Luckily, Zoe Zhao was nimble enough. In the instant she reached out, she actually caught sight of it. Zoe Zhao pinched up the bean sprouts in front of her. I also pinched up a sprout. Lucas E. followed Zoe Zhao's lead. People around us began copying us as well. After everyone had voted, only 2 people voted incorrectly and were punished. And that punishment was that the meat and vegetables in the hot pot increased a bit. But the waiter seemed very dissatisfied with that outcome. Dear customers, there are quite a few of you. This meat and those vegetables are still too few. How about we change the game a little? The attendant's voice brimmed with amusement. I sensed something was very wrong. And sure enough, the next second, there was a rumble as partitions rose beside everyone, isolating each person completely. Even so, no one called out. Next, customers, please continue to place vegetarian dishes into the bowls. But the customer who contributes the fewest types of vegetarian dishes will have to accept a punishment, you know. It was clear this attendant intended to kill. But what should I vote for? I stared at the platter of plain vegetables before me, unable to decide. This round looked more like a game of chance. After a moment's hesitation, I randomly picked a portion of baby bok choy. I just hoped the goddess of luck would be on my side. Only after everyone had made their choices did the waiter's voice sound. All customers have finished voting. Let me tally them up. 80 portions of lettuce, 71 of enoki mushrooms, 24 of baby bok choy, 23 of mushrooms. It seems mushrooms were chosen by the fewest people. The moment those words left his mouth, screams erupted all around, then quickly subsided into silence. But I couldn't relax. Too close, so close. I nearly lost. But suddenly, I noticed something was wrong. According to the numbers the attendant had just read aloud, the total came to 198, but there were only 200 seats. Add the 7 or 8 people who had been wiped out at the start because of the screams, and so the figure of 198 looked suspicious. I glanced again at the plate of plain salad in front of me, and a bold idea rose in my mind. So this time, I voted for 10 portions of lettuce. This time, the smallest portion was 16 servings of enoki mushrooms. After the screams ended, our petition lowered. I glanced at the 2 people beside me. They were both still there, and I breathed a sigh of relief. It seems everyone enjoyed the meal, but happy times always fly by. Now, everyone may leave. I looked up at the countdown and realized it had already reached 0. Finally over. The survivors were wildly excited because only the last floor remained. The loudspeaker crackled to life. Congratulations to all customers who survived the third round. The mall's total number of participants was 7,892. Current number of survivors, 1,013. Next, you have half an hour to proceed to participate in the fourth round. We hope all customers enjoy the game. Great. Only the final floor left. Lucas E. happily stretched his limbs. Yeah, Zoe Zhao was happy too, flashing a big smile. Their excitement rubbed off on me, and I felt a little reassured. But that game was really dangerous. Luckily, I had good luck. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have made it through, Lucas E. said, shuddering at the memory. Actually, I found a bug in that round. The attendant told us to throw in vegetarian dishes, but never said you could only toss one. I figured I'd hedge my bets and threw in several. What? So the extras were yours? I hadn't expected it was Zoe Zhao who came up with that idea. Yeah, fortunately I bet right. Zoe Zhao looked smug. I laughed too. After the first round of votes, I realized the total didn't match the number of people. That actually alerted me. Wow, Zoe Zhao, you're really clever. Ha ha. Ha ha. The atmosphere loosened a bit amid the chatter. Soon, the game on the fourth floor began. Welcome customers to the fourth floor. This floor is the arcade. Hope everyone has a good time. The rules for the fourth floor are as follows. 1. Each person will receive 6 game tokens. Clearing 2 games within 2 hours is considered a success. Those who fail to clear them within 2 hours will die. 2. Each game requires 2 tokens. The clearance rules will be posted above the machine. 3. The arcade has no extra tokens, so do not waste your tokens. 4. Do not steal other players' game coins. 5. If you encounter any problems, you may consult the staff at the service desk. Now, please enjoy yourselves to the fullest. The instant the broadcast stopped, 6 game coins had mysteriously appeared in everyone's hands. Zoe Zhao looked at the game token in her hand, showing a hint of puzzlement. This game doesn't sound hard. Indeed, and it explicitly forbids anyone from coming to blows over grabbing the tokens. I took up the thread, but that also means each person gets at most 1 chance to fail. Once you fail, you're probably out. 那我们就把游戏一次过了，不就好了？ Lucas 已经迫不及待要大展身手了。 Then let's just beat the game in one go. Lucas E. could hardly wait to show what he could do. All right, then let's see where to start. We took a walk around and realized that the arcade's games weren't ordinary at all. Take the hoop toss we picked, arguably one of the simpler games in the arcade, but we noticed that every basketball was covered with tiny spikes. We stepped forward and glanced at the clearance rules. 1 person at a time, 5 minutes to shoot baskets. Each successful shot earned 20 points, and accumulating 1,500 points meant you passed. This doesn't feel too hard, Zoe Zhao said, tilting her head to think. When my friends and I used to play this, we would take turns shooting together, or we could help each other shoot, which made success more likely. But what if this lousy rule doesn't allow helping? Lucas E. questioned. Zoe Zhao's suggestion was a good one. I looked toward the service desk. Maybe we can go ask the staff over there. Rule 5. If you encounter any problems, you may consult the staff at the service desk. So the 3 of us walked over. I stepped forward and asked, Hello, may I ask, are these games only for 1 person? Can other people help? Everything follows the rules. The staff member in front of us flipped through a book titled Rule Manual. The rules for clearing the games are whatever the game says. All right, got it, thanks. So it seems it's possible. We returned to the shooting machine. I was the first to feed in a coin and test the depth. When the basketball came flying back and was caught, the little spikes on it, though thin and tiny, still made me flinch. But time was limited, and the 3 of us threw ourselves into it, not daring to relax for a moment, casting with all our might. By the end, the skin on all 3 of our hands was torn and bloody. Fortunately, our accuracy stayed pretty high, and the points kept climbing, finally reaching 1,400. Just 5 more to go. But by then, there were only 50 seconds left. We quickened our movements and, just before time ran out, managed to throw in the last ball. The screen displayed level cleared, and a stamp-like mark materialized on my wrist. This thing is a ripoff. How can it stab so badly? Lucas, he muttered, looking at the blood on his hand. Zoe Zhao and I weren't doing any better. So, do we keep going? I asked them. This shooting drill is killing my hands. I don't think I can keep going. How about we try something else? Zoe Zhao suggested. So we went for another walk. This time, we set our sights on the bowling alley. A young man fed the machine and decided to give it a try. We stood behind him and watched. He picked up a bowling ball, assumed an air of importance as he took careful aim, and then let it fly. The ball rolled steadily, just about to knock over the pins, and then, unbelievably, the pins ran away. That's right, they ran. The neatly stacked bottles scattered into the air as soon as they saw the ball coming. Now, it wasn't just that young man who was stunned. The three of us were dumbfounded as well. This game is way too messed up. I'm not playing anymore. There's no way to win. Lucas, he waved his hand, trying to leave. There's no use. Every game will be like this. I grabbed Lucas. After that young man failed and left, we still went up to check the rules. Throw a single bowling ball. If you knock down half the pins, you pass. Just reading the rule, it seemed simple enough. But who could have imagined what lay behind that simplicity? I have an idea. I whispered a few words to Zoe Zhao. She gave a knowing smile and dropped a coin. Hey, what are you whispering about? You can't keep it from me. Lucas, ignored, was clearly displeased. But we just smirked secretly and began the game. Zoe Zhao picked up a bowling ball and pretended to throw it, but she didn't actually. She repeated the motion several times, then feigned exerting great force as if to hurl the ball. I glanced surreptitiously and suddenly made a move. Unexpectedly, the ruse worked on some of the people. Panicked, they hurried to run, but some ran while others didn't. Those who ran stumbled and fell. Just then, Zoe Zhao quickly hurled the ball in her hand. Luckily, the corridor wasn't long. The bottle really did fail to react in time and was knocked over for the most part. Having succeeded, Zoe Zhao also received a stamp on her arm. So that's how it works. Lucas remarked beside her. Then I want to play too, hee. Saying that, Lucas went to throw his coin. Lucas I grabbed his eager hand and murmured a few words in his ear. When Lucas took the stage, he copied Zoe Zhao's fainting, but maybe having learned his lesson, this time the bottle wasn't fooled. Then Lucas gathered his strength and made a motion as if to throw. But the bottle still didn't react. It probably thought, like in the previous round, it was a bluff and the real attack would come later. But unexpectedly, this time Lucas really did throw it. And because he was so strong, the bowling ball sped along with great force and struck with brutal force. The bottles couldn't dodge in time, and most of them were knocked down. Having passed again, Lucas now had a stamp on his arm as well. These bottles aren't so great after all. Kind of dumb, someone said. Actually, these bottles are pretty clever, I smiled. It was precisely because I feared the same trick wouldn't fool them again that I had Lucas change tactics a bit, using his strength to our advantage. I'm not planning a play either. I doubt this bunch of mugs will fall for it again anytime soon. We want to look at the other games. This racing game looks pretty fun, Zoe Zhao said, pointing at the simulator in front of us. Then let's give it a shot, I said, leading the way over. The rule read, Racing Showdown. Reach the finish line within the allotted time, and you are considered to have passed. Perfect 3 people, 3 cars, we can play together. Well, shall we play? I asked them. Let's. Each of us still has one chance to make a mistake. This game might be worth trying. Only after getting in the car did we realize it was a holographic simulation. When a match started, I slammed the throttle and tore forward. Everyone around me was wearing helmets. I couldn't tell which ones were Zoe Zhao and Lucas. Better to head to the finish and regroup. I thought so, and pressed the accelerator harder. The first stretch went fairly smoothly, but the second section was not so easy. The second stretch of road was covered in gravel. Several times I almost skidded and tipped over. Although my driving skills weren't great, after all this was a game, so it didn't demand masterful technique. On the third stretch, you occasionally came across chasms that you had to jump across. Thankfully, I stayed focused and made no mistakes. On the fourth stretch, obstacles began to appear. I had to dodge them while avoiding projectiles launched at me. Fortunately, I passed through them all with no more than a few scares. From the second stretch onward, two figures had been tailing me closely. I recognized them. They were Zoe Zhao and Lucas E. Nobody fell behind on the third stretch or the fourth stretch either. The fifth stretch was by water. Although I didn't really understand it either, in an instant I fell into the water. Even though I hadn't actually entered the water, the suffocating sensation of being underwater was simulated by the holographic system. I kept driving the car underwater, but my breathing grew increasingly labored. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, something struck me from the side. I snapped awake immediately and looked over. There was a very tall figure beside me. It was Lucas E. Seeing that I was awake, Lucas E. went over to Zoe Zhao's side and bumped her as well, jolting her back to consciousness. Hold on a bit longer. This stretch is almost over. Finally, we've reached the end safely. When we stepped out of the holographic simulation, each of us had a stamp in our hand. Congratulations to all customers for clearing the level. Total number of people in the mall, 7,892. Current number of survivors, 321. When the countdown ended, the announcement sounded as usual. Congratulations to all customers for successfully surviving. This mall is about to collapse. Please evacuate immediately. This mall is about to collapse. Please evacuate immediately. Along with the broadcast alarm came a slow, swaying tremor. Run! The three of us immediately ran for the emergency exit, heading down toward the ground floor. Then it suddenly occurred to me that attempting to go from the first floor up to the fourth had not been a wise choice. We had to run down from the fourth floor. But there was no better idea. Watch out! Lucas E. shouted, pushing me aside. A huge sign fell where I had been standing. Thank you, Lucas E. Don't thank me, just run. Finally, we managed to crawl out of the mall, filthy and dust-covered, before it collapsed. Not many people managed to run out. There weren't many who had survived these 4 rounds in the first place. I was about to turn and look at the two people beside me, but my vision blurred. Lucas E., Zoe Zhao. I called their names, but no one answered. In the blur, I passed out. Dimly, I heard the broadcast again. Next stage game loaded, about to teleport players.